Our guest, Dr. Garfield Adams, took a very different road to leading a school district's operations. Garfield spent 25 years as a teacher, principal, and special education director before taking on the challenge of managing all operations for Knox County Schools. He'll share how being an educator at heart gives him a unique perspective on facilities maintenance, always tying it back to what students and teachers need. In his first 3 years on the job, Garfield dove into data to quickly learn the ropes and leaned on his team of experts in areas like construction and IT. He even helped reorganize the district's 90-plus schools into regional hubs to ensure resources are distributed equitably. Garfield's story is a celebration of lifelong learning and bold leadership in the world of school infrastructure. Garfield, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Telling Your Asset Management Story. Really appreciate your time and sharing a little bit about your journey, a little bit about your organization's challenges and things like that. And I always like to start with kind of how you got where you are. It's so fascinating to me because the paths that people take to get involved in roles like yours are often very different and unique. And so if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about kind of how you ended up where you are today, I would really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, I am not your traditional chief of operations or assistant superintendent of operations. My path was a traditional educator, taught for several years. And then I went into administration as an assistant principal and a principal and even morphed into a special education director. And so what brought me back closer to home, I'm from Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and I was a special education director in Hamilton County, which is Chattanooga. And I got an offer to come back home as the principal at the high school. And prior, I was the principal at the middle school, and my son was a senior. And so just a very exciting opportunity to come back home and spend some time with my son. And I was there for approximately 2 years, and I got a call from the superintendent from Knox County Schools, Dr. Ryswick, and he had some interest in us working together and encouraged me to apply for the chief operations position. At the time, it was a chief operations, which morphed into the assistant superintendent of operations. And I'm a glutton for punishment, and so I like challenges, and that is an area that I'm not really familiar with. I know enough to be dangerous. Our division consists of security, information technology, asset management, maintenance, facilities and new construction, transportation, and school nutrition. So we're the largest division in Knox County Schools. And so again, it was a challenge that I was excited to accept. And I'm a lifelong learner, and that is an area, when you have a career of 25 years, that is an area where I can certainly grow and get a better understanding of. And this is completing year 3. And so just a great opportunity. Work for a phenomenal leader, Dr. Ryswick. And so it was an area where the learning curve was steep. But being a traditional educator, I could bring a lot to the table as far as how the both worlds work together, as far as the traditional education setting within a building, and the needs of a school to what we provide, what services we provide as an operations division.
So, I mean, that's actually a really unique journey for, as you said, right? You're not the normal background. And so how did you you said it's only been 3 years. So how do you continue to learn and gain insights on some of those areas that are outside of, your background on the operations, on, I presume, transportation, IT? A lot of that stuff must be new. So how have you kind of got up to speed in those areas?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, in the operations division, we rely heavily on expertise, right? And I will not be the expert in construction. We've got our facilities, new construction executive director. He is an architect by trade. The same with our executive director of maintenance. Like, his background is in construction. And I can go down the list. Our technology, he has got a background. I mean, he worked with Apple prior to coming to Knox County Schools. And so I will never be the expert in that area, but what I was able to bring to the table, and I believe in effective and efficient operations. It doesn't matter in what form of leadership you're in. And the one question that I had was, where's our data, right?
Hmm.
And you rely heavily on data as an administrator, and it doesn't matter what capacity you are in. We relied heavily on the expertise, right?
Hmm.
And so I quickly understood the work by looking and digging into the data, and
Nice.
that's what led us to the work that you all have done. Is just getting very data oriented, and
Excellent.
so that was my way to catch up to speed very quickly. My
Nice.
first year was really just to understand the data. My second year was really to understand the work. My third year was really to implement any changes that we needed to do. And so, going into the fourth year, it's really looking at the changes that we have made, and we've made several changes in multiple departments. Uh,
Hmm.
but but relying on that data, and so that has been very beneficial for me as a leader for this division.
That's great, and I love the idea of surround yourself with the experts in the areas that you're not. That's such a great approach from a leadership perspective. And as you I probably told you, I'm actually a geologist, right? So I don't practice what we do, and so I've had to do the same sort of thing. Um, in order to get that consistent and defensible data for our customers, like you mentioned. So I love that. I love that idea of filling in your skills gaps with experts in those areas. So that's awesome. So can you just tell us a little bit about the Knox County Schools portfolio, just so that our audience understands kind of the scale and the framework from where you're coming from?
Absolutely. So we have 60,000 students. When you look at as far as our footprint, we're 11 million square feet. We have multiple regions. When I say multiple, we have technically five regions. Prior to being divided up in regions, and that is the work of Dr. Riswick, which we implemented that our first year. We were looked at as a whole, right? And
Right.
so now that we're looked at as region, it gives us an opportunity to look at regions to see if it's equitable, right?
Right.
Equitable resources and where there are deficiencies, and see where there's similarities as well. And so,
Hmm.
in a nutshell, that's what we look like. We are the third largest district in the state of Tennessee, and so we. I think we're the third largest employer in the Knoxville area, third or second largest, and
Hmm.
so we've got a large footprint in the state of Tennessee, and of course Knoxville City.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, and that's the regionalization is interesting because, as you say, right, with having sort of that the different areas, making sure that you understand the different needs. I presume they were constructed in some cases as the community grew in different eras, so different challenges and things like that. So it certainly helps to break down the whole, right? Sometimes the homogenized answer doesn't tell all the story at a local level. So that's really interesting that you guys have done that. So as you've come into the role over the last couple of years, and you mentioned data already, but what were slash are sort of the top three challenges that you faced coming into this role 3 years ago, and kind of what did you do and or are you doing now to tackle them?
Yeah, that's a great question. So data was number one, right? And so what we had is we had a lot of historical knowledge. We
Right.
had a lot of information that was filed away in a three-ring binder. I mean, it looked like a library full of data,
Hmm.
and a lot of that data was not up to date. That's where that historical knowledge came in. When you have a room full of people who have been in Knox County schools for a career, they could tell you, no, we updated that school, or we did that project in 1980, 1990, and 2000, and so forth. And so, really getting a hold of how we get that information into a system.
Hmm.
That was a huge tackle. We did the same thing with our asset managements. We adopted a system called Asset Panda, and so that was really categorizing all of the assets that we had across the district. I call it tagging and bagging, right? And
Hmm.
having that live in the system. So data was probably our number one challenge. And as we moved into the process of the facilities assessment and we started acquiring that data, we quickly realized that there were projects going on as the facilities assessment was occurring, and so a lot of that data was outdated, right? And so really figuring out after we capture that information, how do we ensure that that information is updated? And so when we originally started this project, a lot of that information lived with information and technology.
Mhm.
Now, as well as I do, there has to be a person assigned to that because of the multiple responsibilities of the individuals who were ensuring that we transported that information into a system, right? Into the SLAM system. And so our next step was really to identify where does that belong. And so we did a reorg, and just so we could ensure that we were doing this process with fidelity. And so
Mhm.
we have an energy management department, and our energy manager, he is currently in the maintenance department. And so we identified this as a need. So we moved that individual under our facilities and new construction, under Mr. Shover, who's our executive director of facilities and new construction. So that individual will ensure that we update that information within the
Excellent.
SLAM system. And so that was another area that we had some concerns about, like where would this information live, who ensures that we keep it updated, who ensures that this information is accurate. So even though that he reports to that department, he is still working in the maintenance
Right.
headquarters. So he's getting real time information, and he's
That's
having
great.
those conversations. So that was definitely a way that we can ensure we do the process with fidelity. But that was a major challenge.
Mhm.
And I would say one of the major challenges that I have as a leader is how do we prioritize the work, right?
Mhm.
We look at deferred maintenance, even though we have a lot of people with expertise in the area. When you think about deferred maintenance, that the way that I look at that is, I'm not a financial planner, and a lot of people
Mhm.
have individuals to assist with financial planning. It is the
Right.
same thing with deferred maintenance, right? So that is our partnership with you and your team to ensure that we have that consultation, right? Now, there emergencies come up, and we can
Of course.
certainly um, uh, defer from the plan, but to ensure that we have a plan and process that makes sense, and we can identify areas of need and deferred maintenance. So that's something that we're currently putting together and working with your team. Very excited about that work.
Excellent. So are we.
That is an area that gives me the opportunity to translate any information to our board with the
Yeah.
why, right?
Mhm.
So you have this data, you're moving forward with this capital planning, and as well as I do, in a large district, there's a lot of wants and needs, right?
Mhm.
And
Yep.
so just to ensure that we're doing this process with fidelity and people understand how we're tackling deferred maintenance and why we're tackling the projects that we are doing. That's an area definitely that was a challenge that I'm very excited to start that work.
Excellent. You mentioned the board, and so for a lot of the K to 12 districts that we've worked with, getting the board on board, pun intended, with a focus on data and with a focus on facilities and deferred capital renewal and maintenance and that sort of thing can sometimes be a challenge. And obviously, boards do turn over. Over time as well. Can you talk a little bit about your journey over the last 3 years of did you inherit a board that was engaged, or how did you engage the board, and how do you keep them engaged?
Oh, great question. So we're very fortunate. We do have a very supportive board,
Excellent.
and a very strong board, and very involved. And so, as you can imagine, this is the first facilities assessment ever conducted in Knox County's school history, right? And so, for them to understand the why, right? I
Mhm.
mean, it's very costly to the budget. You're looking at
Yeah.
investing $1 million, and it's not a one-time snapshot of where you are. It is this will drive capital planning for years to come.
Yeah.
Now, again, there has to be a systems put in place to where it makes sense 10 years from now, right? And
Mhm.
so we're in the beginning stages of like a comprehensive assessment and how we move forward, right? And so getting the board to see in the out years, I don't want to say it was difficult, but it was
Mhm.
challenging because this is new. It is a huge investment. And so just to get the board to understand what this looks like for years to
Mhm.
come, that was a process. But they were very supportive.
That's great.
And I think one of the reasons they were supportive is because they understood the why in the out years, right?
Mhm.
And so really communicating what we look like now and what we want to look like in the future.
Mhm.
Just like when we assess, my background being a former principal and a special education director, especially in a high school, you look at what's your end goal. You look
Right.
at graduation rate, you look at student achievement, you look at ACTs, you look at student growth. It's no different than when you look at your facilities, right? Like,
Mhm.
what is your end goal? Like, is it deferred maintenance? Are we trying to get to um, an area to where we identify and maximize or minimize capacity within a school? So
Mhm.
we look at all of the initiatives with the school district and we align it with our capital planning.
Right. That's excellent. Well, and I think you've addressed two of the big. Well, you've either addressed or are in the process of addressing two of the biggest challenges that people face. One is that institutional knowledge that's in the heads of the people that are have been with the district for decades, that are generally nearing retirement, or if they win the lottery, they walk out the door and all that knowledge walks out with them. And then the second one is the part, the what comes next. Now we have the data. How do we keep it up to date? Because that's another area where, as you said, right, it's a lot of money to get this information. But if you don't keep it fresh, it gets stale very quickly as you do the work. So I think that it's a testament to your ability to engage the board, but also see things at a bigger picture sometimes, because a lot of times it's like, oh, thank goodness that's over, we're done, right? No, well, no, it's continuous. So that's very I think that's the right approach to take. And so we talked a little bit about sort of the near term future and prioritization and things like that, Garfield. But looking a little bit further out, 5-10 years, how do you see the field of facility and infrastructure asset management evolving from where we are today? Not just within the Knox County, obviously within the Knox County context, but not just within that context, a broader context as well.
That's a great question. So I see it driving capital improvement planning.
Nice.
Right now, you have the human element, which is great, right? And,
Mm-hmm.
and and what we did is we looked at what we identified as a need in capital planning, and we aligned it with what we with the information we received through our Slam software. Okay,
Right.
and so fortunately, it aligned well.
Good.
But the reality of it is, I can retire in 5 years. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to ensure that in 5 years, there is a system in place to where the new assistant superintendent assistant superintendent of operation steps in a role and he or she knows exactly the direction they are going because they have the information. And so
Mm-hmm.
right now we're not in a place to where we can say that the information is completely accurate because we've just put an individual in that role to ensure that the information is accurate. Any upgrades that have done need to be identified. B, we have not worked directly with your team in consultation to really get an understanding of deferred maintenance, right? We
Mm-hmm.
have our understanding of what needs to be done. A lot of that is, 911, a roof is caving in, right? Right.
Right.
Not okay. We're okay for this year. Where do we invest our dollars, and
Right.
what does that do to deferred maintenance? So, getting an understanding of what that formula looks like, and I can't emphasize enough that how critical it is to have a system in place that will
Mm-hmm.
drive capital planning. The human
Right.
element, there's several things that get involved, right? Like there's your emergencies, you take care of it when it happens. There's capital planning in the future,
Mm-hmm.
especially when you get a huge influx of dollars, whether it's federal dollars or state dollars. And it's also an understanding, a holistic understanding from the board to the senior leadership team to your district leadership, right? Like an understanding of why we do the things we do in our capital plan. And so when you can point to a software that houses that information, that is accurate, that is making data driven decisions, that's where I would love to see us in 5 years. I'm being very optimistic in 5 years. I would love to retire in 5 years and leave the district in great shape with that information. But really, when you look at 10 years from now, when people look back and they can confidently say, Here is where we are as a district. This
Hmm.
information is accurate, and we know how to plan for the next 10 years. One of the things that came up, and it's interesting you ask these questions. One of the things that came up is, we're very reactive. And what I mean
Hmm.
by that is, like most school districts, we wait for an influx of people to move into the city, the county.
Hmm.
And at that time, we then start looking at overcapacity within
Right.
schools, right? Well, you know as well as I do, especially in today's construction, it can take anywhere from 2.5 to 3 years to build a
Yeah.
school. So,
Yeah.
what do you do in the meantime, right? And so this gives us an opportunity to be proactive and say, yes, we can wait for an influx of people. However, let's invest our dollars in these areas. So when that time comes, we have the appropriate funds to address the needs of overcrowding within our schools.
Right. No, I mean that's genius because I mean, yes, the issue of deferred capital renewal and maintenance is a big deal, and you need to make sure from a risk management perspective that the schools continue to, to operate and to function. But looking beyond just that and looking into programmatic needs and expansion needs and things like that, that's really where that I think is a really strong vision to look to because again, everything in isolation. You mentioned the sort of the asset tagging and the asset management on the maintenance side. The programming needs, all of those other things are going to change and evolve over time. So starting down the path of bringing those things together, I think is really setting yourself up for that sustainable program that you mentioned. And I think that it's really interesting. To hear you talk about after you've retired because that's where we see a lot of organizations sometimes struggle is you get someone like yourself that comes in and champions an initiative and the initiative is strong until you're gone and then that initiative falls away and somebody comes in and they want to do their own thing and start their own initiative and program and with the board support you setting up that foundation of no we're going to hire into the system not hire somebody to replace the system. I think that will also help you not only achieve maximum value for what you've already done, but create that sustainable approach. Because if you're always stop and start, you're just getting back to where you were. So I think it's admirable that you're seeing that and you're looking beyond your own tenure to set that system up. So I commend you for that because I think I wish that more people were thinking about that systematically instead of kind of within the context of their current role. So where did that
Absolutely.
where did that come from? I'm just curious. Like how did that come about?
Well, again, 25 years in education. I've been fortunate to work under some exceptional superintendents, great leaders, and so one of the things that I realized quickly is yes, leadership matters, right? But if you look at leaders or you look at districts who have effective and efficient operations, right, or
Mm-hmm.
anything with great success,
Yeah.
the number one factor that you can point to are their systems and structures that are in place.
Mm-hmm.
And once you have the systems and the structures in place, yes, it's very important to hire talented people, but you have to have those systems and structures in place. And even where there were deficiencies in a district, whether it's facilities or whether it's on the teaching and learning side,
Mm-hmm.
what I've quickly picked up on is successful superintendents come in and they immediately identify what their systems and structures will be, and then the people come in afterwards, right? Or
Right.
they create that professional development to grow their people. But
Mm-hmm.
without the systems and structures, and again, it's just over time. Like I said, 25 years
Yeah.
is a long time in education, and you see how things have changed, and you see how things have come full circle. And my goal is to ensure that Knox County Schools is set up for success long before I'm gone. And the reality of it is, this is again, I'm completing my third year. If I'm in this role for the next 5 years, that's almost a decade in this position,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so that's a lot of institutional knowledge that will walk out the door. So you
Mm-hmm.
have to have systems and structures in place to ensure that information translate over to the next leaders for the next generation.
Absolutely. No, that's awesome. And thanks for sharing that because I think from our audience's perspective, I think a lot more organizations should be thinking in that long term and thinking systematically beyond just kind of the right here and the right now. So I really appreciate that. And I guess just to kind of go back to the beginning, I guess it would have been your first year with the district where we met was at the National School Plant Managers Association conference that was, I think, in Nashville at the time. So a lot of our audience are involved in different industry associations. Can you talk a little bit about NSPMA or other institutions and how you personally and professionally have benefited from engagement and participation?
Yeah, absolutely. And there are some things as assistant superintendent of operations, there's some things that you pick up. What I would strongly suggest to anyone in this position is that you show up at those events with a mission, right? So I was on a mission
Yeah.
to work with an organization that was able to provide us with the data that we needed. I knew I needed this data. In order for me to be successful, I knew I need to get my head around the needs of this district. And so, those conferences and professional development opportunities, one of the key to actually getting the biggest bang for your buck when you attend those events is to know what the needs of your district are. Right.
Mhm.
And also ensure that you sit down and you have those conversations. I can't brag enough on you and your team.
Thank
When
you.
I can tell you, I spoke with several companies and had multiple conversation in length. I spent a lot of time. I was not quick to just pick up the first company or vendor. I wanted to ensure that we vetted the organization. I wanted to ensure that we had engineers, structural engineers. I wanted to ensure we had people with experience they were actually conducting the site visits, and so your team that you were able to provide that, and not to
Thank you very
say
much.
that no, I mean it's credit to you, not to say that there weren't other companies that could
Mhm.
provide a service, but when
Yep.
you look at the magnitude of Knox County schools and 91 schools, you really have to take a hard look at, does this company have the capacity to do the work that we're asking, and asking those questions, those detailed questions, just to get an understanding of, are your goals aligning with the service that they are providing. So those opportunities are invaluable. We
Excellent.
go to the national conference, we go to the local conference. That is something that, again, I will continue to go to. I mentioned asset management. I was on a mission for data. Even our asset management, I was on a mission to find out what we need for asset management. It's no
Mhm.
different than our safety and security team.
Mhm.
When we look at weapons detections, I was on a mission to find that as well. And every one of those areas that I identified is what I found in those conferences.
That's awesome. No, that's great. And we're very heavily involved in industry associations as well in terms of not just getting out there, but also sharing ideas and learning what those issues and topics are. So thanks for sharing about your involvement in specifically NSPMA, but in general industry associations. It's something we recommend that anybody in the industry find the association that works best for them. So I appreciate you sharing that. And Garfield, thanks so much for sharing your unique journey and your unique background and some of the unique perspectives that you bring to Knox County. I've been so impressed. Again, someone coming not from the facilities world, having such a detailed curiosity and wanting to learn about facilities. So kudos to you and kudos to you for thinking long term with the district. Any last parting thoughts for our audience before we let you go?
No, other than, again, I would again strongly encourage any chief operations officer or assistant superintendent of operations. I would encourage, even if you are a veteran in your field, I would strongly encourage having different eyes on a
Mhm.
facilities assessment. You have to think in the out years, right? You can't think in the present time. You have to think about the condition of the district 20 years from now, right? And so the work that you all have done, it has been invaluable to our district, and I would just strongly recommend and encourage anyone in this position to take a look at that, because again, I'm excited about the work we're going to do as far as the consulting piece, but
Mhm.
just the information that we have currently is, I mean, we're beyond where we were in 3 years. So very excited about the work we're going to do in the future.
Well, that's awesome, and thanks for the opportunity to collaborate with you and your team. It's been a pleasure. We're excited about where we've been and where we're going as well. And thank you so much for sharing a little bit of your asset management story with our audience. We really appreciate it, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks a lot, Bill. You too. I
Thanks a
appreciate
lot,
it.
Garfield.
Thank you.
Dr. Garfield Adams showed us what it means to step out of your comfort zone. As a former principal now overseeing everything from security and construction to transportation for an entire district, Garfield bridges the gap between the classroom and the operations side of the business. He talked about relying on expert colleagues and using solid data to make decisions, which helped him conquer a steep learning curve in Tennessee's third largest school district. We also heard how he's bringing an educator's focus on equity to facilities management, making sure every school gets what it needs. Garfield even joked that he's a glutton for punishment, taking on a job where he had so much to learn, but his passion for helping schools run better made it all worthwhile. We're thankful Garfield shared his journey and reminded us that with curiosity and courage, you can lead in any field.